Excited to be with you this morning. We are starting a brand new series called The Greatest of All Time, The GOAT Today. Some of you, no doubt, already came ready to argue, and I'm not going to entertain that for a moment. You'll see why here in a little bit. But I do want to say that I'm excited to open this up with you guys, and I pump faked you a little bit by giving you a scripture reading out of Matthew. It is relevant to the first half of this message that we're about to have, but a lot of it is not going to come from Matthew. Some of y'all saw Matthew after we spent about a year and a half in Matthew from 2024 to 2025, and you said, I thought we were done with this. We are, I promise. We're just going to touch it a little bit today. But I want to share something of a core memory with you this morning, something that has a big place in my headcanon, something that I think some of you probably experienced as well. And if you didn't, you're going to experience it vicariously through me this morning. So strap in. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was June the 14th, 1998. Most of you, judging by the color of hair in the room, were alive then. Some of you were not. But I was laying on my living room floor in Martinsburg, West Virginia. The rest of the house had fallen asleep, but because of what was about to happen, they were not going to stay asleep. I was completely enthralled and fixated. My entire world was bound up in the moment that was unfolding on national television on our huge, we thought was huge, 32-inch projection back TV that was saddled into like one of like the wall-sized entertainment centers that had like everything that your family ever possessed fixed into one in your giant TV. By the way, if you still have one of those, it's time to let it go. It's time to let it go. There's like a joke about millennials having like the most minimalistic decorations in their houses because we grew up with those giant entertainment centers and we just needed to breathe. But I was fixed on mine. My favorite team, the Chicago Bulls, were in a dogfight of a Game 6 in the NBA Finals against the Stockton and Malone-led Jazz. The Bulls were shooting to try and close a third straight NBA title. Winning one is difficult. Winning two back-to-back, almost impossible. Winning three in a row, unprecedented. But this Bulls dynasty was shooting to have done it for the second time in the span of 8 years. And everyone knew, no matter what the outcome of the series was, that we were probably witnessing the end of an era. Many of you who didn't watch those games live or don't care about sports, maybe while you were in quarantine lockdown during COVID, saw on Netflix the documentary The Last Dance. The Last Dance was a 10-parter that chronicled this entire last season in 1998. We were watching the last moments of an icon, and that word's not strong enough. We're watching the last moments, at least as a Bull, for an idol that many had grown up watching, admiring, emulating, and adoring. And with the Bulls trailing 86-85 in the waning seconds, it seemed that the Jazz were going to accomplish something that no other team had managed to do in any of the prior 5 championships. And that's that they never were forced to an elimination game. No one even made it to a Game 7 against Jordan's Bulls. And yet here were the Jazz leading with a few seconds left and a chance to push it to a final and decisive game. But in that moment, there was one person who everybody knew was going to have the final say. They knew the game was going to end up in his hands, and he made his move. The ball entered the post to Karl Malone on the block, what should have been a game-sealing bucket, and then his airness himself. Michael Jordan swats the ball away from behind, pilfers the orange, and gives the Bulls one final possession with history on the line. And what happened next would be the most iconic image maybe in the history of sports. And if you were there, when you see the picture, you'll still feel the feelings today. Everybody knew that Jordan was going to take this shot. We had seen it 100 times. He was made for this. And so it was 2 dribbles to the right, a completely clean and legal slight nudge on the hip of Byron Russell, and then a perfect pull-up jumper dead on. And this is the shot seen round the world. What a moment. The ball hangs what seems like forever in the air. And then, as you can tell by the horror on the faces of Jazz fans, just look at these expressions. You know you're about to be goated. Guys they look like they're watching a horror movie. Just so much anxiety in this photo. And of course, the ball goes through the bottom of the net splash. And as the crowd in Utah and all of Salt Lake City goes silent, my living room goes crazy. And now the entire house is awake. Sorry, Mom. I don't know if you still remember it. I definitely do. And so it was a perfect storybook ending to a dynasty and a career, as perfect as you could ever write. And if you witnessed it, you probably still get chills today. But that moment, in the minds of many, defines greatness. And we spent a childhood beholding and chasing that greatness. If you weren't there, you might not realize just how big this figure of Michael Jordan was. Before Mike, the game of basketball was growing in popularity. Shout out to Magic and Bird for doing their thing and saving the league, but it was not a global force like it is today. There was no internet. And so many of you can't even imagine a world without the internet. There are some of us who still do. And even remember the beginnings of the internet with that terrible screechy sound you had to listen to for 37 seconds before an animatronic voice said, "You've got mail," and you were excited as you could be. But before any of that existed, a meteoric rise of Jordan and the highlights and the shoes and business and as an icon was not just unprecedented, it's something that you'll probably never see reproduced because now that technology drives people to that level of fame. Michael in his day was the fiercest competitor you'll ever see. Indomitable on the court, charismatic off of it, always respectful, had the right thing to say, but never apologized for his will to dominate. And his star and fame changed not just the game of basketball, but business and our culture and the world. In a weird way, a basketball player accomplished this and he inspired millions of people. I was one of them. And for those of you who weren't there, I want to show you just a little bit of what this insanity and fame actually was like.
My name is Michael Jordan. I play professional basketball for the Chicago Bulls.
32 seconds to go. A 1-point lead for Georgetown. Gordy to Black. The time, 18. Shot, Jordan! Michael Jordan!
If I had to trace my evolution, the Michael Jordan evolution, it always had to start back in college. Hitting a shot against Georgetown in 1982 when I really didn't know exactly what I was doing.
North Carolina has won the 1982 NCAA championship.
It awakened a person inside of me to excel, to compete, to excel, to be one of the best or be the best. That drove me. And I guess with that shot, it kind of ignited a fire inside of me that nothing was going to stop me.
About to meet somebody every kid on every playground in America is talking about.
Jordan under the floor, let's watch.
That he is one of the greatest players ever is indisputable.
Here's a kaboom. Michael Air Jordan.
Initially, it was great. Who wouldn't want to be in the commercials or want to see your posters or your billboards all over the place? I'm just a country boy from North Carolina, and to be on television and do these things were great.
Look at the air, look at the hang time, look at the flying motion.
Nobody in the world can cover my main man, Michael Jordan. Nobody.
Michael Jordan! Michael Jordan!
What'd you expect? Young my butt? It's just one of those freak situations, I guess. It has a lot to do with timing, a lot to do with personality.
Still time to grab a burger?
I don't know, and I don't know what continues to keep it going.
The inbounds pass comes into Jordan. Here's Michael at the foul line. A shot on Elo. Good! The Bulls win! They win!
That was get the ball, Michael. Everybody get the ball out of the way. Close the basket.
As long as we're on this earth, I think everybody wants to be known as a winner. And the only way you can be remembered on this earth is to win.
You ever see Michael Jordan?
No, just in those commercials.
Think Mom would like Mandy's? Maybe.
Maybe you see him do one of those 360 dunks.
He kept it in bounds. Here it is again.
There's a lot of criticism of Jordan. Can't do all that scoring, and yet they still win. And that was enough to get me to this point where I had to take this team or be a leader to this team to get to a championship.
Jordan trying to shake off Starks. Oh, what a move by Jordan! Here's Jordan, a steal from Newmar. Takes it in for the Duke.
This is what you live for, to play Michael Jordan in the finals.
You better eat your Wheaties.
3-on-2 for the Bulls. Michael in the drive, in for the right. Finish it! Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan. The Bulls blowing the Lakers out. And the Chicago Bulls have won their first ever NBA championship.
We're going to Disney.
Ooh, if that doesn't get your juices pumping, you're at the wrong church this morning, because that's what I got for you. I want you to remember two lines that were in that montage of highlights. Number one, if you want to be remembered in this life, the only way to do that is to win. And number two, something that Magic Johnson said, this is what you live for, to play Michael Jordan in the finals. That hysteria was so great, you'll remember Jordan on those Wheaties boxes, and I remember my dad came home even one day with something called Michael Jordan cologne, and I was in the 3rd grade, spritzing myself up with way too much. Nobody told me, guys, nobody told me. There was an old ad campaign called Be Like Mike from Gatorade with a whole song that went along with it, and everybody sang, all I want to do is be like Mike. Even Larry Bird got in. His nemesis was in on the action there. And we all sang, I want to be like Mike, but I'll be honest with you, I confess I internalized it. It went past the slogan for me. I tried to live it. I loved basketball. As many of you know from what I've told you in the past, it was way too central to my identity as a young man. I didn't get Mike's height and I didn't get his athleticism. I got his baldness a lot earlier, and I did get his competitiveness, that thing inside of you that says that your value comes from how convincingly you win. And the fact that you win. And my dad instilled in me a great and relentless work ethic. He said, you might not be as big or fast, but you will win in life because you will outwork. You will wear people down. And when you smell blood, you will finish the kill. And I wanted to be Michael Jordan every single day. That same tape that I played for you and others, I watched every single day. Every day before practice in high school and in college, the same tape, the same section, the same highlights, queued up on my own VCR on my 19-inch projection TV in my room. Yes, I know I'm old. VCR, it was a thing. I would watch it every day. And I emulated his game, yes, but I found that my biggest advantage was emulating this man's mentality, because that's what I thought made him great. I watched how he moved, interacted with teammates and adversaries. I absorbed it deep into my identity. If I was going to be great, I needed to think like greatness. I needed to fight like greatness. I needed to dominate like greatness. And you might not have cared anything about sports or Michael Jordan, but I promise you have somebody in your life that you looked at that way. Many young people stand in front of the mirror and sing to themselves, and nobody tells them they can't sing. Many more young people stand in front of a smartphone and sing on TikTok, and nobody will tell them that they can't sing. It's tragic. We all have people that we emulate because we think this is what will make our lives meaningful. We all want to be the greatest of all time, and so we argue, who is the GOAT? That question, who's the greatest of all time, has been around for a long time, and what might seem like a totally different universe from what we just watched, a wildly different timeline. The disciples come to Jesus in the text that we read a little bit ago, and they ask the same question in different words. They said, Jesus, who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? They said to Jesus way back in like AD 32, who is the GOAT, Jesus? Well, they have a different kind of idea in mind than what Jesus does, and strangely enough, his response to them applies to what we just saw about this guy who we call the GOAT, Michael Jordan. See, I think the problem we need to unpack this morning is we have often the wrong definition of greatness. And if you live according to the wrong definition of greatness, your destination will not be defined by greatness. Instead, it'll be defined by dissipation or disintegration. I plan to show that in the next few minutes. So if we're going to have this conversation, who's the greatest of all time, we got to ask the question, what is greatness anyway? Like, what does it actually mean to be great? Everybody has in their mind someone that they're thinking of right now that exemplifies greatness for them, something to shoot for, something meaningful. Maybe it's a father figure in your life. Maybe it is a celebrity. Maybe it is an athlete. Greatness simply defined, if we go to Merriam-Webster, Cambridge, all the dictionaries and thesauruses out there will say the quality of being great, distinguished, or eminent. There's a quality of separateness involved in greatness. If you drill down further, the definitions will say the quality or state of being important, notable, or distinguished, importance and fame and power or success. And there's a word in that second definition that gives us a clue to why the concept of greatness is both intoxicating for us, we can't get enough of it, and yet it's also painfully elusive for us. The phrase state of being implies a finiteness that we're uncomfortable with. See, the very idea of greatness in our minds is inextricably linked to permanence. At some point, all of the greatest of all time arguments, all of the arguments about who is the GOAT will come to the place where the length of the achievement will weigh the heaviest. Hall of Fame inductees from every single strata are not inducted for one brilliant, shining accomplishment, but sustained success over a period of time. That's why we laugh at the one-hit wonders of the world. I don't know who your current one-hit wonder is, but for the folks that watched all those highlights the first time that I just played, they know a group called Milli Vanilli. Laughing stock of the world to this day, one-hit wonder. They didn't even sing their own songs. But there's a reason why getting in the Hall of Fame is different. When you think about the greatest of all time, no matter what avenue it's in, it's sustained success. If you're going to be the greatest musician of all time, if you're going to be the greatest guitarist of all time, the greatest businessman of all time, the greatest athlete of all time, the greatest leader of all time, the greatest king of all time, it takes permanence. And so there are two ways in this world that we imagine that we can achieve real greatness in life. And one is just by sustaining a level of success over a long period of time and forever if we can, or by accomplishing something that leaves such an impact that the legacy or the memory of it lasts forever. In either case, being great means chasing immortality. Shows up at every level of life, every level of competition in human experience. There's something in us that grasps and struggles for the eternal. The businessman wants to build a business that'll last much longer than him if he can. Forever in the history of the world, having a family line and a name that would continue on is what your life is about. Celebrities want their star to shine, and they need it to shine continually, even after their careers are over, if they want their life to have any type of meaning at all. And somewhere on Friday night, a group of kids in a huddle all over the country got the speech. You guys know the speech. Friday Night Lights is the stuff that dreams are made of. That speech happens to every high school football team. It happens to every T-ball team, inexplicably, even though you're not even supposed to be keeping score. But parents living vicariously through their kids is another sermon for another day. You know the speech, right? Creighton was in the first service. He co-signed this. This is what happens. Somewhere on a Friday night, a coach is saying to their kids, "Men, you have worked your entire life for this moment right here. Look at the man beside you. The whole town is behind you." And I don't know if you know about Texas, young men, but in Texas, if you're a district champion, your name goes down in history forever. What you do on the field tonight, no one will ever take away from you. They will remember you forever. So you go out and you come back a winner, or you let them carry you back on your shield, burn the boats. Because what you do today, man, echoes in eternity. And 16-year-olds, and they run through the sheet and the smoke goes off. And then 16 years later, they're sitting at a Chili's in their varsity jacket and they're mad at the world because nobody remembers them. The speech, the dreams that we sell, the stories that we tell, it happens to the best of us and we chase it. We want to last forever. Only then will you truly have mattered. After all, if your greatness doesn't last, is it really greatness at all? So naturally, every generation has their own idol, their own standard of greatness, and the arguments continue to ensue. Who is the GOAT? And the few who actually make it and reach that rarefied air, the top, the pinnacle where no one can take anything from them, we consider that greatness. And so what Michael Jordan represents for millions of people, the peak of human accomplishment, very few people ever reach that success, that fame, that glory, or that level of being considered a GOAT. And here's the thing, because few of us ever actually reach that level, we are able to continue to be seduced by the lie that greatness gives your life meaning. Because Only if you're ever at the very top of the mountain will you see that it still doesn't fulfill you. Only if you're ever at the top of the mountain will you learn the difficult lesson. Because we don't ever make it to the top, we continue to tell ourselves, and the world continues to tell us, if I just achieve a little bit more, my life will matter. If I'm a little bit more successful, if I'm a little bit more great, if I make a little bit more money, if I have a better title, if I have a perfect house, if I have the perfect marriage, then my life will be worth living. If my kids stop getting in trouble and embarrassing me, then my life will be perfect. If I just have this, I will be content and fulfilled, and I will be able to rest. But since we are so far from the peak, we never run out of things to want or need next. You never run out of affirmation to crave, validation to receive, competition to perceive. So we just buy into the cycle and the promise that lasting greatness is meaningfulness and worthwhileness, and that value and purpose in our life comes from our accomplishments and our success and our victories and our wisdom. When Jesus' disciples asked who's the greatest in the kingdom, their idea of the kingdom was a temporal kingdom that wouldn't last forever. They wanted Jesus to set up another political government, and if he had done that, it wouldn't be in existence today. Seduced by the same lie. Jesus was after something different. The promise the world gives us is that if you achieve greatness, nobody can take it from you. But they don't leave the biggest somebody in that equation when they make that promise. And the greatest somebody that's a threat to us is an old guy by the name of Father Time. And the last time I checked, he's undefeated. Back to Mike for just a second. This is an article that I read some years ago. I don't remember how many years ago it was because Father Time is working on me too. But I saved it for this very moment. And I printed it out on paper old school because Father Time. The article is from outside the lines before it was actually a television feature with ESPN, and it followed Michael Jordan around for his 50th birthday, a long way from what you saw on the screen there some 15 years later. And what struck me were the things that this American idol, this greatest of all time, the man who had achieved the absolute peak, not just as an athlete, but in culture and in business and success and greatness, the things that he was actually tortured by. Early in the article, it says this: there's a palpable simmering whenever you're around Jordan. It's as if Air Jordan is still in there churning, trying to escape. It must be strange to be locked in combat with the ghost of your former self. Anybody know what that feels like? Y'all don't want to talk to me this morning, but some of y'all woke up and felt the way your back felt, and you are locked in combat with your former self, whether you realize it or not. Comes for us all. Jordan confesses in this article that he never expected to live into old age. He thought he would die young. He lived hard. He lived fast. He thought the universe might take him, but it won't permit him to suffer the graceless loss and failure of aging. A tragic flaw could undo Air Jordan, but nothing as common as bad knees or failing eyesight. I've been blind since I was 9 years old, Mike. He travels on a private jet everywhere he goes. It's painted like one of the sneakers that I'm wearing for you today. He travels on this private jet, and one of the most shocking things is the need for his ego to be continually sated is that he gives code names to everyone that's a part of his inner circle. And Michael Jordan's code name when he travels is Yahweh, just to remind everybody that he's God in that room. He has to be the most important person in every room that he enters. He says, man, I wish I was playing right now. I would give everything up to go back and play the game of basketball. That's how central it is to his identity. And it's funny that Jesus would say the greatest in the kingdom means becoming like a little child. And everyone, no matter what level of greatness you accomplish in this life, will spend most of your later life wishing you could go back to be a little kid again. That's the wisdom of Jesus defeating the definition of greatness that our world gives us. Later on in the article, there's a comment about Jordan being incredibly sad when he starts to think about the past. 20 years after he lost his father, it's clear that Jordan still needs his dad. Not only does he need his dad, he needs his heavenly father. More on that in just a moment. You know, what gets me about Mike is that people look and they say that ego that he has and how rough he is around the edges is just part of what made him great, that it was necessary. His trainer writes about it in books and news write about it. But he actually laments it. He talks about how he lost the person that he was in the pursuit of all this greatness. He says, I can't get it back. My ego is so big now that I expect certain things, and back then I didn't. In his mind, he is continually vexed and haunted by a number, 218. Years and years after finishing playing the game, 218 is the number that is stuck in his mind because at 260 pounds, he knows 218 was his game playing weight. And if he could just get back to 218, maybe he could play again. Maybe he could silence all of the voices that say he's not the actual GOAT because a new GOAT is on the scene now. So he stands in his cavernous closet and just obsesses about getting back to that weight. And you might not be able to relate to a lot of things about Michael Jordan, but some of y'all stood in your closet after Thanksgiving dinner and thought about the clothes you couldn't get back into, and you got a number in your mind too. Yeah. Could he still play at 50? Jordan confesses, "This hunger consumed me so much. I am my own worst enemy. I drove myself so much that I'm still living with those drives. I don't know how to get rid of it, and I don't know if I could. How can I enjoy the next 20 years without this consuming me?" Talks about him watching on the TV as an argument is happening about Tom Brady and Joe Montana. Any Joe Montana as the greatest quarterback fans in here? Do you still exist? See, you forgot about Joe. 5 Super Bowls doesn't do much for you when you're old. Jordan is having this argument. He's mad that people forget about how great Joe Montana was and the fact that Brady lost Super Bowls and Joe Montana never did. And he's watching the outcome of this poll, and it hurts him because he knows that's how people are going to look at him and he who shall not be named, but you all know who I'm thinking of. I'm going to leave you with this quote from the article. To Jordan, aging means losing things, not just eyesight and flexibility. It means watching accomplishments of your youth be diminished, maybe in your own eyes through perspective, maybe in the eyes of others through cultural amnesia. Most people live anonymous lives and they grow old and die, and any record of their existence is blown away. They're forgotten, some more slowly than others, but eventually it happens to everyone. Yet for the few people in each generation who reach the very pinnacle of fame and achievement, a mirage of immortality flickers, and they come to believe it. Even after Jordan is gone, he knows people will remember him. Here lies the greatest basketball player of all time. That's his epitaph. When he walked off the court for the last time, he must have believed that nothing could ever diminish what he'd done. That knowledge would be his shield against aging. There's an old fable about returning Roman generals who rode into victory parades through the streets of the capital, and a slave would stand behind them whispering in their ears, "All glory is fleeting." There's a true story about great Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius who hired a servant to tell him every day, "You're just a man." Nobody does that for professional athletes. Nobody does that for any one of us either. Jordan couldn't have known that the closest he'd get to immortality was during that final walk off the court, the one symbolically preserved in the print painting in his office. All that can happen in the days that follow is for the shining monument he built to be chipped away and eroded. What a legacy. All that can happen in the days and years that follow is for the shining monument he built to be chipped away and eroded. And I realized at that minute how sad I feel for Michael Jordan. He probably will never see this, but I can tell you beyond the shadow of a doubt, I would not trade places with him. I do not want to be like Mike. Because if your life is defined only by the knowledge that everything you have poured your entire being into, there is nothing awaiting you except to watch other people chip it away mercilessly and denigrate it mercilessly so that it all eventually comes to nothing, I cannot imagine a more miserable existence. The results of that poll that he was watching between Joe Montana and Tom Brady came up, and it was a 50-50 split. Jordan's response to that was, "It doesn't make sense." But I think it makes perfect sense. And I think it's an inevitable reality for us all. Why? Because history is replete with the scant traces of those who achieved what felt like immortality that time has just eroded into the sand, if anything remains of them at all. It's wild to think about that outside of the scriptures that we read and study weekly, most of the notable people that have ever existed in the history of the world, we know nothing about. We have no knowledge of them at all. Some poets have taken up the charge of giving us perspective on this tragedy because I wouldn't force you intellectual readers among us to just watch sports highlights only, so I got something for you too. Something straight out of the 19th century. Percy Shelley, English poet, 1811, wrote this. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, 2 vast trunkless legs of stone and sand in the desert. I imagine he was inspired by those great statues that we see all throughout ancient Egypt. It says, near them on the sand, half sunk a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor welled those passions red which yet survive. Stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them, the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretched far away. Think about great kings of the past like Xerxes and Ramses stamping their moment on history in stone, thinking that this will live forever. And now all that they're left to is some dusty paleontologist digging up their remains, handing it over to what used to be the History Channel for some dude to say that ancient aliens did it. Think about the fate of our greatness. Shelley was far from the first to warn us. God, of course, made this known ahead of time. In the Old Testament, within the wisdom literature, one of my favorite books exists. I know I say that all the time, but I got a lot of them. Heaven forbid a man have hobbies. Ecclesiastes is not just for wisdom and perspective. I think we need something from Ecclesiastes to make sense of our desire to be great and the problem that we all face of everything that we do in life seemingly being wiped away. In chapter 2, verses 12 through 17, the preacher, as he is called, the author of Ecclesiastes, maybe Solomon, maybe some other sage, has been vexed by just life itself, watching everything come to nothingness. And he decides, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pursue pleasure. I'm going to pursue success. I'm going to pursue accomplishment. I'm going to pursue entertainment. I'm going to see what the meaning of life actually is and if any of this actually lasts. And he comes to chapter 2 and verse 12 and he says this, I turn to consider wisdom and madness and folly. Maybe I can just outthink this. For what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what has been done. Then I saw there is more gain in wisdom than folly. There is more gain in light than darkness. The wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceived that the same event happens to them all. Then I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then do I decide to be very wise? And then I said in my heart that this is also vanity or meaninglessness. For the wise and the fool, there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come, all will have been long forgotten. How the wise dies just like the fool. So I hated life because what is done under the sun was grievous to me. All is vanity and striving after the wind. The preacher in Ecclesiastes says, what does it matter even if I was able to be like Mike? We're all going to the same place. Nobody's going to remember either one of us. So what is the point? He says, wisdom seems to win out over folly, and greatness seems to win out over mediocrity, but it's a shallow victory. It's a meaningless win. It's a futile or worthless exercise because the end of both is still the same. Even the wise still die just as the fool, and great men still die without escaping that rule. It doesn't matter if we do better or we're smarter or we're wiser or we're greater than the next man. We all ultimately land at the same result. So what good is greatness if years from now, none of it will matter? The greatest and wisest in history ever under the sun will be totally forgotten. Yale, Harvard, great institutions, ancient kings, every great quote that is now plagiarized by ChatGPT in somebody's essay is going to be forgotten. Someday, no one's going to remember that I was here. No matter how wise or great or knowledgeable or successful that I am. Think of your family. I know a little bit about my grandfathers. I know next to nothing about my great-grandfathers. I know even less about my great-great-grandfathers. I don't even know where they came from and who they were and what their names were. They could have been great in their day. I would never know. Think about how much you even know about your own family. And think about the madness it is to assume that the same is not going to happen for you. And this leads you down a dark road where you begin to ask, okay, well then, what's the point of pursuing anything good in life? At a societal level, what's the point of pursuing social solutions and programs to improve the lives of people when the author of Ecclesiastes says the crooked cannot be made straight? Corruption and perversion always ends up abusing innocent people. Why do we even try? What happens when you realize that you can't socially, economically, or legislatively program the brokenness out of the world? What happens to an America that finally comes to grips with the fact that you can't vote the brokenness out of humanity, that only God can get the brokenness out of us? And since the preacher in Ecclesiastes understands this, he's not only vexed, he's not only discontent, he's honest. He says, I hate life. If none of this matters, I hate it here. Y'all have seen the meme, I don't want to live on this planet anymore. This is Ecclesiastes. Nothing is new under the sun. And nothing will make you hate life more than the chilling realization that it doesn't actually matter anyway. And as hard as that is to hear, maybe as hard as all of this has been to hear, underneath of it is an anchor of hope for our soul and the truth of what makes up real greatness. But before I share that with you, I want you to ask yourself honestly, do you find yourself vexed like the writer of Ecclesiastes? Do you look out at the world and the way things are going and you're just riddled with anxiety because it doesn't make sense? Or maybe it's not even the world around you, maybe it's the world inside of you. You have tried to be good, you have tried to be great at something, anything, you keep getting rejected, you keep falling short. You've tried pursuing logic and wisdom and learning. You have tried church, you've tried everything and still found that nothing you've poured yourself into can hold up to the weight of eternity that is instinctively inside of you. If you feel that pressure, if you feel that tension, I want to say something counterintuitive to you today that might surprise you. I believe that God is giving you a valuable gift. If you feel uncomfortable about the state of things, if you feel uncomfortable with that, I'm telling you that God is calling you. Here's why I love this book. It's ancient wisdom, but it is so relevant to us today. It's written so many years ago, yet the thesis of the book in Ecclesiastes that there's nothing new under the sun is proved true by the fact that the author is able to, with laser accuracy, predict the accomplishment-obsessed, production-obsessed, consumption-obsessed, scientific, post-enlightenment Western world that we now live in, that it was authored thousands of years before. See, our world, our culture has set its heart on finding meaning and creating purpose through the acquisition of things and knowledge and accomplishments and production. The academy and the market in our world are God. In a word, what the preacher explained in Ecclesiastes chapter 2 is essentially just Western civilization. And more specifically, the quest to discover, design, and define and possess the existence of everything under the sun. And so far, it has proved to be an exercise in futility, literally. Because the end of the secular mind, apart from God, trying to find meaning in all of these things, the naturalism, the reductionistic approach says there is no meaning to life. Your best bet is to find your own meaning and your own purpose and define that for yourself. And that way you can finally be happy. And being happy is the purpose, but nobody's happy. How is that working out? There's an existential dread that hangs over our society today. This is the anxious generation. Depression cripples millions. All of our learning and collecting and amassing, for all that we have gained in our endeavors, it seems that we have less than ever before. We have to forget whether someone will remember me after I'm gone. Today, most people struggle with people even recognizing that they're actually here right now. And it reveals the absurdity and the dishonesty of our Western world. You see, if your beginning is meaningless and your end is meaningless, then you have to have the guts to admit that everything in the middle is meaningless too. See, if there is no order to the universe, if there is no God, if you are a cosmic accident, then nothing you do matters. But nobody lives like that, do they? We can't. There's something deep inside of humanity that will not let us live that way. It doesn't add up and we can feel it. And so we just drive ourselves mad. Just like the preacher in Ecclesiastes, people grow jaded and cynical. And then in that agony, we start asking ourselves, why do I even care? Does it even matter? It's all a dead end. It is vanity and striving after the wind. And as I stop to ponder the sadness I feel when I realize I wouldn't even trade places with my greatest idol My greatest hero of my childhood, the literal goat. When I stop to think about how sad it makes me that I don't even want to be like Mike. When I think about all this striving and posturing and accomplishing and learning and all of its meaninglessness under the sun, I realize that how this disillusionment is an incredible gift from God. And I want you to know it's a gift from God too. Because later in Ecclesiastes chapter 2 and verse 24, the author, the preacher continues, he says this, there is nothing better for a person that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also, I saw, is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he has given the busyness of gathering and collecting, only to give to the one who pleases God. This is also vanity and striving after the wind. Did you notice the transition that happened there in his statement? Nothing is going to be different. The wise and the fool both perish. The great and the lowly both perish. They all come to nothing, and nobody remembers. What is the point of any of it? But with God in the picture, things that were meaningless and worthless and vanities and futile are described as gifts. He says that wisdom and knowledge and joy, greatness itself, turns from being a vexation or a problem for you into a gift. But how? Is it just as simple as saying, now that I know God exists, the things that used to stress me don't stress me anymore? No, it's not that simple. In Romans chapter 8, the scripture says that God has actually made our lives this way on purpose. Romans chapter 8, verse 18 says, for I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. Amen? For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. That's you and I. Verse 20, for the creation was subjected to futility, vanity, meaninglessness, worthlessness, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope that the creation itself will be set free from this bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. You see, this is the revelation of the scriptural principle that we talked about in our last series. It says that God is intentionally subjecting everything under the sun to futility so that we who have to live this life and we who observe this futility are forced to confront the meaninglessness and pointlessness of building our lives on any of it. You see what I'm saying? God wants you to know that this world around you and pursuing greatness in it is futile and comes to nothingness because he wants you to realize it is pointless for you to build your life, your esteem, your identity on any of it. And God knows there's no other way out. Either you have to confront that truth or you have to bury your head in the sand and pretend that there's meaning when there actually isn't. The only way out is to look up at God and submit our wisdom, our work, our passions, our pleasure, the way we define greatness in our lives to the one who has given order to chaos and meaning to meaninglessness, the truly great and lasting one. I'll put it like this for you. The futility of our own greatness under the sun is a gift given by God to save us from being distracted from a meaningless life. One more time. The futility of greatness under the sun is a gift from God to save you from being distracted into a meaningless life. Does that make sense, church? Here's what it means when it all shakes out. In the beginning of the book of John, we read, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And we often, and we do well to think about the implications and the understanding of what the Word is, the person of Jesus and the flesh and all the places that touch. But behind the word word is the Greek word logos. And that Greek word logos meant more than simply word to the Greeks. See, for the Greeks, the word logos also meant the meaning behind the universe. Logos meant the purpose and the reason and the logic and the design, the reason behind it all. And because that's what logos meant to them, they were obsessed with finding it. If you know anything about Greek culture, they pursued wisdom and greatness intellectually. They pursued wisdom and greatness athletically. They invented the Olympics after all. They pursued all of these things. But by the time the Old Testament was written down, they had grown hopeless and filled with vexation also. They couldn't find meaning in any of it. That's why they spawned groups like the Epicureans who said, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. That's all there is. Or the Stoics who said, when you die, you die. You might as well not get too worked up about it. They had no answers. And along comes John, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, who pens this radical and explosive idea that Jesus Christ is the Logos, that he is the word, he is the meaning, he is the purpose, he is the reason, someone said for the season, but not this morning because y'all are quiet. He is the why behind creation. And that creation has been subjected to futility in order to save us from being distracted by meaningless things, away from the one in whom is all meaning. Dare I say, in the presence of my wife who hates sports with every fiber of her being, God has subjected this creation to futility so that I would not be distracted by basketball away from a meaningful life. It's a long-winded way of saying, yes, sports are kind of meaningless in the long run. Yeah. There, I said it. You happy? She's so proud right now. She's so proud. If this is the case, if Jesus is the Logos, and he did come, and he did die, and he was resurrected, I want you to know it changes everything. Because if that is true, everything that didn't matter now actually matters. It means that there is a freedom and an escape from futility. I want you to know the Christian is not subject to this perpetual futility and meaninglessness. In our last series, we said that whatever God does endures forever, that what God uses what we go through to make us more real or lasting, that what Satan wants to use to unmake us, God uses to make more of us, that what would unmake us, God uses to make great in us. And we know that the most vexing aspect of growing and accomplishment or wisdom or greatness under the sun is that it all literally comes to nothingness when we die. All is blasted away. No one remembers and no one cares, and everything you ever did becomes ruined. So yes, greatness along with all other idols come to nothingness, but whatever God does remains. And when the scripture says you become a new creation, that is something that you don't make. That is something that God makes. As soon as you give your life to Jesus, you become something that lasts forever. And that means that you break the cycle. It means every single thing that you do, every relationship that you have, every job you steward well, every godly wisdom that you gain, every great deed and every accomplishment, every single thing that God does in this world through you as a new creation lasts forever. Someone said what we do in life echoes in eternity. Some of the men got that one. Revelation 14:12 through 14 proves it. It reads like this. Here's a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. And I heard a voice from heaven saying, write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Blessed indeed, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds do follow them. Listen, family. Adding wisdom and greatness to meaningless things does not give them meaning. Being great at meaningless things does not give them meaning. All our greatness under the sun apart from God leads to nothing but vexation and hopelessness. And if you are a person who, when you look at the world, you realize that the more you learn about how things work here and the more you learn about what they ultimately come to, you find yourself more anxious and more hopeless. You find yourself having a pit of anger and discontent about it, dissatisfied with life. I just want you to realize this morning you're bumping up against the gift that God is giving you. He is calling you. Because if you've never felt the futility, you'd never do the hard work of thinking through this. If you have that hopeless feeling, then you have somewhere along the way put your hope and your trust in something that can never deliver, not against the weight of eternity. And you are grasping for the wind. Christians are not immune to this because we all desire a legacy, a name, a purpose, a meaning, a reason, a life worth living that people will remember. We all want to grasp for greatness. We all want to be great. We all want to escape the futility of greatness under the sun. And to be set free, we want to be clothed in glory and dignity and power. You may be a follower of Jesus and realize that your hopes and loves have been disordered. You've been continually crippled with anxiety because you put too much hope and stock in what the world defines as greatness or in your own ability to figure everything out. Too much meaning in that which will not last. And I just want you to know that Jesus is here for you and he loves you. And these might be the smelling salts that you need. Michael Jordan might be the undisputable GOAT on the basketball court, but in the end, time will erase everything that he's accomplished. Someday, no one will know that he existed. Even Air Jordan needs his father, but he needs his heavenly one more than anything. Because if immortality is the truest measure of greatness, then the true greatest of all time is the one that resides outside of time. And when you belong to him, time can't strip anything away from you that truly matters. Not your time, not your health, not your talents, not your legacy, not even your loved ones. You can't take anything with you out of this life into death except for the person that you become and the people that you bring with you. So, as the Bulls used to say in their huddle, I say, by all means, get down for your crown in life. But remember that the true GOAT's crown is an eternal one. It still feels strange to admit to you guys that I don't want to be like Mike. I don't want to trade places with him. I want to pray for Mike, because I can promise you that Jesus is a far superior choice of someone that you want to be like. So I'll not sing that song ever again, but I'll say, all I want to do is be like Christ. All I want to do is be like Christ. In case you've been lost in the nostalgia sauce of this sermon, I want you to know this message talked a lot about Michael Jordan, but hopefully you realize the message is not about Michael Jordan. This message is about all the things we build our lives on, trying to grasp greatness and permanence and meaningfulness. And Mike is just the example of someone who captured the world in his hand and is being forced to realize that it means nothing if he's not in God's hands. And in this way, we are all like Mike. Because if you don't have Jesus, then everything you're building your life on, your hopes, your identity, it's meaningless. It's vanity, grasping after the wind. But if you're in Christ, God says that your works become redeemed, glorified, and eternal, and they do follow you. And that means something greater than success and greater than greatness. That means eternal significance. And that is God's desire for every single one of his children. And that is my desire for you this morning too. Eternal significance. In God's eyes, you matter, and what you do matters. But it only matters forever if you do it with him.